Here we go.
Hello, everyone. It is Rich Schefren, and as you can see, I'm not alone. It was a last-minute addition, but it was really kind of funny. And I'm going to tell you that story as soon as we kind of dive in. So, welcome everyone to another live stream, and today we're going to be talking about the difference between two types of entrepreneurs. And really, if you're not clear about what those differences are, and if you haven't made a choice about the path that you want to take, you cannot make the best decisions to really kind of chart your future. And this was kind of brought this whole concept was kind of brought back to my attention because of a call that Max and I had. When did we have it? Like last Friday? When was it?
Yeah, Friday.
Yeah.
Friday.
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna want you to tell that story, like, and I'll kind of cue you up on it. But if if this is the first time joining us, let us know and put it in the chat. We'd love to make this much more of a dialogue than a monologue, and not just a dialogue between Max and I, but also with you guys. And so, if the more you participate, the better this will be. The more that you ask questions, the more you'll get answers. So if this is the first time you're joining us, let us know where you're at. Like, where are you kind of watching this stream from? And then also, if this is the first time joining us, let us know that as well. And so, with that all said, I think we'll kind of dive in, but I would love this to be as interactive as possible. So, in that vein, and Max, like, just in case people don't know who Maxwell Finn is, like, he is, in my opinion, and he's so much more than probably what I'm going to say, but this is how I know Max. When I was first getting back into the game, like 2 years ago or whatever, I asked one of my closest friends, Michael Cage, who is one of the guys that I think is one of the smartest guys online. His brain processes at a speed that makes me feel kind of stupid. And so he's one of the smartest guys I know. And I asked him, I want to look at Facebook, like, who should I be paying attention to? And he said, the only person you have to pay attention to is Maxwell Finn. And so that was a strong enough recommendation for me, and started following some of his stuff online. Finally got a chance to talk to him, and we hit it off. And he's a contributor to Steal Our Winners. He's a lot more than that, obviously. But each time he drops like crazy knowledge, and people are always really excited about what he delivers. I like that he does the last Steal Our Winners segment. He showed us how he took Alpha Brain for Onnit, which he drives traffic for, and he took the cost of acquisition from like about $130 down to about $13, which is quite a dramatic decrease, about 90%. And that then makes Maxwell a lot of money. And Maxwell has an extremely aggressive and effective Facebook agency. And he's so good that more and more it's harder to become a client of his as he actually uses that skill to take over more businesses, to grow the businesses that he has, etc. And so it's a real treat to have Maxwell here. And Maxwell wanted to do a podcast today. He hit me up at the last minute, and I was like, oh, this is perfect, because the live stream that I planned on doing today was based on the conversation that we had on Friday. And so because of that, it just happened to be perfect timing. So what I like to do, Max, is just say hello to everyone. So like I put their comments on the screen. It's a way of acknowledging them, but also hoping that because of that, they'll participate more. So we have Gabrielle, who's saying aloha from Maui, and we have Carlos from Venezuela. And Gabrielle thanks us for the very valuable content that we're generously sharing with them. Isabella says, nice to see you. Greetings from Germany. Carlos says, I'm getting a lot of value from the live streams. Thank you for sharing. Joe from Chicago. Rito says, yay, Rich and Max. Let's dive in. Cheers from Brooklyn. Hugo is in Miami. Hey, I'm going back there on Friday, Hugo. Hope you're having a great day. You told me to ask you about BGS update on today's call. Any good news? I'll talk about that towards the end, but thank you for reminding me. So let's get into it, right? So today we're talking about the two different types of entrepreneurs. Which type are you? And I'm going to cue this up by talking about how last Friday, I don't remember what day Max sent out an email, but he either sent out an email on Thursday or Friday morning. And I asked him about that email, because in that email he was looking for e-commerce businesses to buy. And so I made a comment about that, like wondering what that was about. And I loved your explanation. So I don't even want I don't know if you remember your explanation, but go ahead and tell them what you told me if you can remember.
Always put me on the spot there. So we'll see. And it was funny because I was trying to get you to do a last minute episode, and this is how good Rich is at persuasion and getting people to do things. It's so, hey man, can you do me a favor? I need a podcast episode for this week. You want to hop on? We always have great chats. And he's like, yeah, I'm doing a live stream. Why don't you come on there and we'll combine it? And I was like, of course, that sounds like a great idea. So I was out there looking to get Rich on my show, and ended up here with Rich today. But yeah, I mean, so with the acquisition stuff, what we started realizing is there's a lot of people out there who are good at having an idea, or they're good at the kind of the basics of like one specific thing, like running Facebook ads or drop shipping or specific areas of marketing, which is one part of running a business. And so they have a good idea, they may have a store that starts to make a little bit of money, but they don't know what to do beyond that point, right? Because making $200,000 a year with an e-commerce store, I mean just like top line revenue, is one thing, but building a multi-million, $10+ million a year business that has employees, you have different distribution channels, you're not dependent on one traffic channel. That's a totally different skill set. And the way you need to look at building a business is very different there. And so that obviously got us talking about, well, what are two types of entrepreneurs? And that brought you to the scaling versus the lifestyle. And so I'm excited to talk about this because it's two very different types of people. And like we were talking about before we went live, I think unfortunately right now, almost all of the marketing online is geared towards the lifestyle entrepreneur.
Right.
You don't see a lot of people out there putting together programs, trainings, and courses for the people that are looking to build a scalable, sellable business, right? A business that does 10, 20, 50, $100 million. There really isn't anything out there that's helping those individuals.
Yeah, and so when I asked Maxwell the question, the way he summarized it very quickly, he said that there are a bunch, and so the two paths, just so that we're clear, is whether you're a lifestyle entrepreneur, or the two types, lifestyle entrepreneur or a growth entrepreneur. And when Maxwell and I were talking last Friday, he said, well, we found that there are quite a few lifestyle entrepreneurs that started like an e-commerce business as kind of like a side gig, like a side hustle. But due to the quarantine, whatever else, it actually has grown more than they anticipated. And, with an information business, it's a little bit easier as it grows, right, to maintain that growth because, like, you're selling a digital product, you're not carrying inventory, you're not dealing with a lot of the other issues that a lot of businesses have to deal with. And so, if you're a lifestyle entrepreneur and you start an e-commerce business and it starts to grow, you really have a choice to make. If you were doing it as a side hustle and you really like your job, then all of a sudden you can't satisfy what the business needs from you. And so Maxwell was telling me that there's opportunities to buy some of those businesses because they didn't get into the game to have like a growing business. They got into the game to like supplement their lifestyle. And I think that it's not as black white of a choice as it might seem to people. Like you're either one or the other because I like to kind of maintain both, like, you know what I mean? And I guess we'll get to that. But let's kind of start out, I guess, Maxwell. Like, I think we should both kind of talk about what we see as like what are the differences. And, well, why don't you go first? This way, like, this becomes more our show today, not me interviewing you, since you're going to be throwing it on your podcast as well.
Perfect. Yeah, so I can talk about it. As a, it's you gotta get out of the hotel. You got that hotel Wi-Fi is brutal on you. It's
Sorry about that.
it's always funny because the juxtaposition of I got fiber in here, so it's blazing fast versus blazing slow. So I can't wait for you to get back into Miami. Yeah, I think the the big difference at like a fundamental level that I see between those two groups is what their motivation is, right? Like the motivation and goal of those two groups. At least in the immediate why they're doing what they're doing. And maybe it changes and evolves over time, but like why they started it. I think the lifestyle entrepreneur is driven by cash flow, is driven by I want to start something that can make me as an owner and an operator immediate money that allows me to fund what I want to do, whether that's I want to travel, I want to buy a fancy car, I want to buy a house, things like that. So it's immediate gratification, and the scaling entrepreneur, the other entrepreneur, is thinking about, they're kind of playing chess. They're thinking a few moves down the road. They're thinking about, okay, making money today is good, but if I want to build true wealth, if I want to build genuine impact, if I want to build legacy and those types of things, I can't really do that off of cash flow. I need to build something that I can actually have a liquidation event, an exit, whether that's selling a company, whether that's going public, something like that. And so they're thinking first and foremost about building an asset. They're thinking about building a brand, something that down the road one day is going to have tremendous value. And the way you go about doing those two things is totally different, right? Because if you're looking at, hey, I'm looking to build, that means that I need to reinvest profits. I need to reinvest capital into growing, into hiring, into holding more inventory for different distribution deals. Whereas the lifestyle is going to look at, hey, I could do that, but then that leaves me less money today, and I'd rather have an extra 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 this month for me. So I'm going to forego hiring, I'm going to forego buying inventory and say drop shipping. I'm going to forego it cheaper just to send them, a plastic envelope. And that's really the big, at a fundamental level, those are the two ways I see those people being different.
I wonder if you would you like, because I don't know that I agree with a lot of those distinctions, and while we're talking about it, I'd be curious, like, what most of the people who are on this stream, if you could tell me whether you think you're a lifestyle entrepreneur, so you could just write lifestyle, or if you think you're a growth entrepreneur, type growth or scale, whatever you want to call it. I'd be curious. Like, I wonder how most people categorize themselves. Oh, cool. We got some more people joining us. They're just saying hello to us. But like for me, one of the distinctions that I kind of look at when I look at businesses just in general and the entrepreneur as their relationship to the business is responsibility for profit. And so in a lot of businesses that I've looked at, been involved with, coached, whatever, right? Many times when I first start interacting with the business, the only person that's responsible for profit is the owner. Like at the end of the day, there's no one else that the owner can call in and say, why aren't we making X? They might be able to say, why is media costing this? Or why is this costing that? Or why aren't we selling more of this? But at the end of the day, when it comes to responsibility for profit, it all rests on the entrepreneur. And, when I think a lot of people, and I hope this makes sense what I'm saying, I think a lot of people who want to have a lifestyle business end up avoiding employees because it does impact your lifestyle. Like having employees is like, in a way, having children. I mean, not the same, but there is a responsibility there. However, if you grow the correct way, and there will be times like in any entrepreneur's life where they are completely all alone responsible for profit, right? But as you grow, if you are bringing in employees and some of those employees take on responsibility for profit, right, then all of a sudden, those employees are less of an impact to your lifestyle and more a funding of your lifestyle than anything else, right? So sold it to our list, but we didn't really sell it much more than that. And I think we had I'm going to guess, I don't know if this number is accurate, and if I said a different number in the past, then that's probably the more accurate number because I just don't remember. But I think we had about 1,000 people in it, paying about $50 a month. Yeah. And we hired this guy, Chuck Dolce, who was a copywriter at Agora. He came and worked at Strategic Profits, and he took over the responsibility of profit for Founders Club, right? It was now his baby. And so he started writing sales letters for all of the reports, right? And he was given a retainer, and he also was getting 5% of, was it 5% or 10%? I don't remember, like of the increase in monthly billings from his point on, right? So within like the first 2 months, like I think he doubled or tripled the number of people that were in Founders Club. So immediately, like let's say he put on another 1,000 people. Like we were making an extra $50,000 a month. Truck was costing me $5,000 to $7,000 a month, but now I was making an extra $43,000 a month just because Chuck was there than what I was making before. And also, he also took over the writing of my reports. So I just had to, it was still my ideas, and we worked on the outline together, and he would write the drafts and I would correct, right? Whereas in the past, like I would take 3 weeks off just to write the report myself. And so I freed up 2 weeks of my time. I was making an extra 50,000 close a month. And like, that's like the ideal scenario, right? Like I brought on an employee, they're responsible for a profit center, like a product. And then it's their growth. It coincides with the growth of that product, right? So we'll be doing that with Steal Our Winners like pretty soon. Like we'll bring someone in whose sole responsibility every day is how do we sell more Steal Our Winners? How do we make the product better? How do we sell more of it? How do we create more offers for it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think a lot of times when people make the distinction between like a lifestyle business and a growth business, they think it's like either or, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. And in my opinion, like ultimately you want to have a business that like where the responsibility for growth kind of leaves your shoulders and eventually goes on to others. And then you have the ideal lifestyle because you're the founder of the business. You're no longer the CEO of the business. You're no longer the operator of the business. But that you don't get there like, in a day. And you don't get there but by having massive funding either, at least in my opinion. You get there by growing a business and being clear like where the opportunities are for focus, like where if someone was focusing on, there would be a lot more profit. And then you find the best people that you can to put in those positions, because then those people can then start making a lot of the decisions below that, right? Because at the end of the day, it's going to hit their financial performance. And so, like they're responsible for profit, but any costs that are associated with Founders Club now are being watched by him, right? Because it's going to hurt his pay. It's going to hurt the income he makes. So you end up having what I would say like a lot of partners, but at the end of the day, they're not equity partners. So they're growing what your business is worth. They're taking off responsibility off your shoulders, and it's a win-win, right? I wonder, like, I know your agency has grown a lot, and you've gone in lots of directions too. Like you've got the Trump money, and you got a bunch of other stuff. Do you have that already? Like, are those areas like the profit is someone else's responsibility at this point? Max, I'm not hearing you. Are you hearing me? Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear. What? Now I can hear you. What
Yeah,
happened?
I switched.
Oh. Okay, cool. So we didn't hear what you said.
Cool. Okay. You can hear me now, though?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, just was switching my mic to be here instead of there were some feedback issues. So yeah, I mean, I'll answer your question. I guess I just want to digest it first and go back a little bit. I think there's this interesting turning point for entrepreneurs when they get started, where and it doesn't happen for everybody. Where you get into it, a lot of people get into it, especially in our space, because they want to make money, right? It's like, I need to make money because I have bills and I have expenses and stuff, right? And so you start by, okay, I need to make X per month and then I'll be good. And that number keeps increasing right? Because once you make 5,000, then you want to make 8,000, you want to make 10,000 because your lifestyle increases. And it's this constant game of cat and mouse. Very few people are able to make the transition from raising that bar for my personal income to reinvesting those profits and building a team. So that's the first thing that we noticed is like for first years of my career, when I finally broke through, and I'll switch my, because I know people are saying there's an echo. Let me see if I can switch to.
I could also put my headphones on. So while you're doing that, I'll just grab my headphones.
Yeah, headphones might be helpful as well. But I'll also switch my.
Okay. So I just switched back.
It's very low now. All of a sudden now. Say something else, Max.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay. Cool. So we should be good. Sorry, I made audible on the fly. I thought that would be better, and it backfired. So your headphones should be good too, and cutting on the background noise. So the thing for me was like I was constantly raising that bar, right? I used to be happy with, I was like, hey, if I can just pay my bills, I'll be happy, right? Like if I can just cover my basic expenses, I'll be happy. Because I went years living like check to check, consulting client, maxing out credit cards, and then once you start making that, I was like, well, I want to make more and more to make more money. If it's just you, right? Like if you're not investing in team or resources, you're just going to constantly be building something else that's dependent on you. And then you have another idea, but you move over here and this thing goes away. So we made the decision to like get more focused, to invest in team, and that you take a financial hit personally by doing that, because all that extra profit that you're spending on payroll now and healthcare and 401k matching and all that stuff could easily go to you. But the victory, the win, this is what I said earlier when my mic wasn't on, like one of the greatest feelings beyond finally making money and being financially independent is, I want to coin a cool word here. I'm going to figure out a better word, but like time independence, right? So you want like financial independence initially. You want to be like, I don't want to be financially burdened by anything and be able to just do what I want when I want. The time independence is way more gratifying. And by time independence, I mean like the business is no longer dependent on you working 12 hours, 14 hours a day. The profits of the business are no longer dependent on you driving everything. Like the weight of removing that pressure from you and now distributing that pressure across a team and making each of those individuals responsible, like you said, for a small piece of that profit is a massive win. And it's something that I think everyone should be striving for at some point. But again, it's a mindset thing. It's like hyperbolic discounting. Like Misbehaving is a book I'm listening to right now about behavioral economics and just how like fundamental econ. You look at Keynes and all these, and Freeman and all these guys over time that came up with these amazing economic theories. They're brilliant. They're the smartest people in the world in history probably, but they're so irrational because it assumes that people are like, the theories of like, hey, if somebody gets $1,000 windfall today, that person is going to divide that equally over the remaining lifetime and spend that equally rationally, because that's a rational thing to do. But nobody does that, right? If I'm making $30,000 a year and I get $1,000 windfall, I go and I spend $1,000. Most people do, right? They don't think that way, and so it's very, very hard to avoid the temptation of the now, even though you might know that down the road, if I do X, this is better for me. And like, so for us, like it took us a long time, it took me a long time to beat that habit, to beat that thought process and to say, okay, I'm comfortable enough, like an extra few thousand, extra 10,000, 20,000 a month, like isn't going to change my life. Like I don't need anything else. Like I have everything in the world that I could possibly want. So why am I just taking this out of the business and putting it into a bank when I can put this into a team and free up time, which is way more valuable to me? And like you said, empower those individuals to be responsible for driving revenue, for driving growth. Give them a sense of ownership. They're not owners, but like there's a lot of ways that you can give employees that sense and feeling of ownership. And obviously profit sharing and stuff does, that is an ownership structure, dividends and stuff, but it's structured a different way. So yeah, we have a great team. We continue to build our team, and it's not a coincidence that the more we built our team, the more our business has grown, the greater my happiness has increased. It's freed me up to do things that I want, like this, like being able to say, like Rich and I talked this morning and say, hey, let's do a 2-hour live stream, spur of the moment. Like if the business is dependent, I can't do that. I can't just take 2 hours out of my day on a weekday and do a 2-hour live stream, right? But I know that while we're doing this, I have people that are working around the clock to build our businesses. And while I'm talking, we have Shopify sales coming in every minute for our Proud Patriot store. And we're, like that's happening in the background while I'm doing this because we've hired the right people, we've trained them, we've invested, we put the systems in place, and we've given them a sense of ownership. So yeah, I think it's really important, and we're definitely doing it. We have a long way to go, right? We're not a huge company, but we're building something. We're building an asset. We're not just building a cash flow lifestyle business anymore.
Do you remember when you made that transition? Like for Unicorn? Was it pre-Unicorn or like what was it?
So it was post-Unicorn. So we had done it. We had done it with Quantum, which was our first agency that we had with Kevin and stuff. But we did it wrong. We rushed. We grew that agency too fast. We had massive overhead. We had 2 offices. We had lots of employees. And so there's a balancing act, right? Like because what we did, the mistake we made with that agency is we also launched the Trump coin. We launched that product that we owned in the kind of middle of it, and our revenue and profits went like this because it was a huge offer. And we started hiring and building the company as if this was going to be sustainable and as if this was our business now. But we weren't a product business. We were a service-based agency. So when that died off, now we're just an agency again. And now we have all these people. So now we got to go out there and start cold calling, outbound sales, taking on crappy clients. So when we started Unicorn, we kind of shrunk back in. We got scared and said, okay, we don't want to do that again. So we went back into that scarce mindset for the first probably 6-12 months until the rat race, the kind of that started again. We're just like you're on the wheel, the hamster wheel. It's like, course launch did really well, but now we can't do anything else because I'm doing everything, and I go over here and then it falls off. So it's probably about a year into Unicorn that we started saying, we need to do this. We need to build a team, but we need to do it smart. We need to do it strategically, and we need to make sure we're hiring the right people, paying a premium for the talent, and we're making sure those individuals have that sense of ownership so they're actually responsible and excited to drive revenue and profit and hit goals and stuff.
I'm muting myself like in between just to make sure there's no background. But for me, like I'm trying to think like when I had the hypnosis business, it was really clear that like when I started it, I didn't want to be just a hypnotist. And as soon as like we started getting things going, I was not going to be a hypnotist. So it was like I was clear on the outset that this was not a lifestyle business. This was going to be a growth business that then would give me the lifestyle I wanted. And so I kind of approached it from the get-go that way. And, another interesting thing, just as like a tangent side note to kind of like, I'll just mention it and maybe we'll like pin it for later, is that I often like when I'm talking to an entrepreneur and they're thinking about hiring their first employee and they're asking me like who that employee should be, the question I always ask them is, well, let me ask you a question. Like if you had to choose like one answer to this question, which would it be? You would make more money if 1, you had more time, or 2, you had skill sets that you don't currently have. right? And if it's more time, then you need to hire someone that's going to take stuff off your plate so that you free up more time. And if it's skills that you don't have, then it's about finding someone with those skills so that it can, together now you can grow the business. And that's how I've always kind of looked at it. When I started Strategic Profits, though, it was kind of a lifestyle business to start. I was just coaching people, and I had an assistant and like a right-hand guy, and that was it. 2 people working for me. And, I'd had like 25 clients, at any given point. And it wasn't like anything that needed to be managed, right? And I could do all my coaching calls from my pool, and it was like life was good. And then when I released the manifesto, right, and all of a sudden I had more than 1,000 clients, like the whole thing had to change. We could not support 1,000 coaching clients with 2 people. Right? Like that, it just couldn't happen. And so I quickly called someone who I had worked with in the past to come down to Florida and hire me a team, because like I need to now coach these 1,000 people. I'm going to be a little busy. So like I hired a COO, and then like a team came on underneath him. But it was like a massive failure, like when I look back at it in hindsight, until we pivoted. And I got into a pattern where like we had this team, I was doing the coaching, right? And the team was supposed to come up with front end products that we could then go out and start like acquiring customers and doing that. And they just massively failed, right? And so I would be finished with a coaching program, and we would owe out like maybe 100 or 200 grand in accounts payable, and we had no like future money coming in, right? So I'd have to write another report, bring in another couple $1,000,000, right? Like the money would sit, this team would work, there'd be no progress. I'd have to then satisfy the coaching or the creating the program that I just sold. And that went on for the 18 months where I wrote those 7 reports. And when in the last report, I told my COO, Brian Johnson, I'm like, look, I'm done. I'm not writing another report to save this business. This is ridiculous. I'm making less and less with each report I write. The business is requiring me each time to hit a home run, and I don't like that. Like at some point I'm going to write a report that doesn't work, and then we're just screwed, right? And so as far as I'm concerned, I'm not writing another report until we don't need one. And if Strategic Profits goes out of business, so be it. I'll write a report after that, and I'll bring in $2 or $3 million, and I'll keep the $2 or $3 million. I won't be funding 25 people who are trying to get products up and running and not really seeing any kind of significance, right? And so what ended up happening for us was that we actually moved offices to an executive office, right? So that we could fire people and make our office smaller, if we didn't find a new model, because I wasn't planning on writing a report. And that's when we developed the automated webinar. The only reason we developed the automated webinar was that I just refused to write another report. And then the team shrunk quite a bit because we kept firing people to stay in business until we had a model, right? And then we created the automated webinar, and we had this one model, and it worked like gangbuster, especially before anyone even knew what an automated webinar was. And the whole team the whole team maybe went from 25 to 6. So now there were 6 of us, but all 6 of us were just focused on the numbers of that webinar: the registration rate, the show up rate, the engagement rate, how long people stay on, the closing rate, the engagement before people get on, the selling sequence after, are we doubling sales? Just that. We weren't focused on anything else. And we made more money than we ever made prior. And we had an amazing run until I wrote the report about automated webinars, and then everyone started kind of eventually moving in that direction. But it was a huge learning lesson for me, right? So that later on, when I hired Chuck, I wasn't going to make the same mistake. I wasn't going to hire a group of people and somehow hope magically that they're going to solve problems in my business while I totally focus on something else and not really be that involved. And so did you have it sounds like to me you had that same kind of thing, different, but you had this learning experience. You're like, okay, this is like, I'm not going to make that mistake again, like, which is the way I felt. Like, I'm not going to make that mistake again. This time I have to do it differently. And that's kind of why so much of entrepreneurship a lot of times is kind of looking at mistakes and setbacks as really just the price of the education of building a business that works, unfortunately, right? You don't have to learn everything the hard way, but some things you are going to learn the hard way.
Yeah, I think it's an investment. I think it just the wording, even with like team just hiring, I think people look at it as an expense. That's why people don't do it, because nobody likes costs or expenses. It triggers the pain receptors in your brain. So hiring the right people is an investment. Making mistakes and failing, a lot of times if you learn from it, it's an investment, right? So it's as long as you're taking stuff away from it and you're moving forward and you're not making that mistake again, I think you're doing the right thing. Like nobody hits a home run out of the gate, right? It just maybe a few people do, like Zuckerberg. Like there's anomalies, right, where it just like the stars align and this brilliant person just launches the perfect business at the perfect time with the perfect partner, like has everything going for them. But even them, they struggle and have challenges. You just don't hear about them early on. But yeah, it was similar to you. Like it's focus, right? I think that's the other thing, like that we're not talking about here. It's there's a whole other end of the spectrum. So there's the lifestyle, then there's the growth, but then there's like the growth obsessed or hyper growth, which is like the other end of the spectrum. I don't know if you can call that a third tier. It's just like a type of growth. And that's what you see in like Silicon Valley and that world. And I think that's just as dangerous, right? Because that's like, hey, we have a shit ton of money and we want to just grow. So we're going to hire all these people. We're going to get these fancy offices. We're going to launch 100 features and do all these things. And that can backfire and be just as detrimental. So there's definitely a sweet spot. There's an area that's beyond lifestyle, but isn't growth for the sake of growth. It's strategic growth, right? It's like we have a goal. We have a plan and a path. And these individuals bring onto the team are going to help us achieve that goal more efficiently, in a more timely manner, and generate more profit for the company that we can then continue to reinvest and move forward. Because with Quantum or the other times where we hired aggressively, we were also doing a lot of things. We were trying to do 5 things at the same time, and none of them were connected. And when you look back, and I apologize too, we just built this home, so we have construction all over. So if you're hearing beeps and stuff, it's because there's forklifts and stuff driving by, which I have no control over. We looked back on the last few years. We were doing our kind of partner yearly annual like plan and review and stuff. And we said, what are the time periods where we've made the most money? What are the time periods where we've been the happiest and been the most optimistic about the business? And not just with Unicorn, but any business prior. And 100% of those times were times where we were all very, very focused on a specific thing. We had a certain type of the business, part of the business, a project that the whole group was in alignment with and wanted to work on, wanted to grow. And anytime we started deviating from that because that thing was becoming very successful, we're like, hey, let's try this. That thing suffered and that other thing didn't work out that well. And so we ended up with 2 or 3 mediocre things when we could have built one really great thing. And like what we're doing with the political brand right now is a perfect example of that. Here's something we've dabbled in for years, but never focused exclusively on. And we decided, about 4 months ago, hey, like, let's turn this into an actual company. Let's build a dedicated team. That's all they do 24/7 is work on this business and growing this business. And let's bring in partners. That's all they do with us is work on that. And it's not a coincidence that we now have a Shopify store that's doing $1 million a month. And we have a booming affiliate part of the business that's doing, another 5 figures a month. And we have all these revenue streams now coming in. We have an asset that'll probably do 12+ million this year, with really, really good margins. And that's because we built a great team that's hyper focused and they have a singular goal. And it's like, hey, our goal was we're going to hit $1 million run rate. And we had whole group of people that they were working to make that happen, and it happened. And I think that's a really important lesson to take from it as well. Is it's like, don't just hire a bunch of people to go and achieve a bunch of different things. There needs to be a focus for those people and a focus for the company. Otherwise, you end up with just a lot of overhead and a lot of people chasing a bunch of different goals that don't get hit, and usually that backfires, and you end up firing those people and losing a lot of money.
Yeah, I agree, and I wonder, like, I've never started a business from outside the business. Like, I've never created like a business plan, given someone a bunch of money and said, like, make this happen, or like that. Like, every business I've ever been involved with myself has been a business where I rolled up my sleeves and started it, and then, as it grew, I would then pull myself more and more out of the positions or roles that I didn't feel like I was best at. And I wonder, like, that I like, my thought is, and I'd love to like get people's thoughts about this, and I want to like recognize the people that have already commented so that they have incentive to keep the conversation going with us. But that nowadays, I would say that I kind of am a lifestyle entrepreneur that looks for opportunities in like the way I work, to then spot the opportunities where I can put a team on, or I can where I'm not doing what that part of the business could use because it wants to grow, and I think that probably
but you worked really hard to achieve that.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
I think that's a key part to understand. It's I think becoming a lifestyle entrepreneur, once you've already achieved a lot of success, totally different, right? Than like prior.
Yeah.
Right. I think at that point, then it's like, it makes sense. Hey, you've built assets, you've built wealth, and now you have the luxury of like, I want to do something that's fun, that fits my lifestyle, that's it's hands off, and so they're both lifestyle entrepreneurs, but like contextually they're different.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would say that like, there was no lifestyle in the beginning. Like, the lifestyle was working in the business, like pretty much, like pretty much all the time, to get that initial momentum going. Because like, maybe a topic for another day, but I'm such a big like fan would be the wrong word, so I'm not really sure what the right word is. But like, I have tremendous appreciation or respect for momentum. And momentum in business seems like such an important thing. Like, when you start winning, like, wins become easier. And when things are bad, like the default is like the next thing's going to be bad until like you kind of spin out of that kind of cycle. And so when I've started a business, like the businesses that I've started, when I've started by myself or with my ex or whoever, right? Like, there was no momentum. So the momentum had to be created. And it's like, that's like pushing a rock uphill until you get to the top of the hill. Then you can push it down, and then it like goes on its own. But getting that rock up the hill in the beginning is a ton of work, and figuring out how this business should operate. So let's say hello to like a couple people, and then feel free, Max, to ask me any questions. I don't want to take total control over this, because I want it to be like our live stream today. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah, you could say what I would just ask people too is like, building off what you just said, the momentum stuff. Like, people that are listening either on the live or listening when I put this up, like, I'm curious if you just put this theory to the test, like if your daily numbers that you're checking actually impact your daily outlook and your mood and your energy for the day. Because for me, I mean, I have a whiteboard over here. It's not mounted yet because nothing's mounted yet, but I have like daily do's and daily don'ts. Like, I have in big red font, like, do not do this daily. And the number one is overcheck. Number 3 is let a bad ROI day improve your mood and attitude. Because that is, I see it a lot in our industry, where people are so obsessed with momentum, with daily performance, with hourly performance. and addicted to that. And so when they have a good day, like when Alpha Brain was, $14,000-$15,000 profit days, like those are days where you're just like, it doesn't matter what happens. You're in a great mood and you're just moving, you're rock and rolling. I want to work hard. I want to put more hours in. And then days where it's like, we just got crushed today. It is easy to let that just deflate your entire day and throw you into a rut. And that can lead into another day of a rut, another day. And all of a sudden you're 2-3 weeks where you're just demoralized. You're not working as hard. You're not as passionate about your entire energy is off. And I'm curious, like, if that's, a lot of people I speak to, especially on the coaching side, like, have that exact same problem. I'm curious, people that are watching right now, listening, if they have that problem as well, where it's they're letting that negative momentum spiral because it's driving their attitude, it's driving their personal life, it's driving everything. And I still deal with it, right? You have lapses, but like moving away from that and not letting little things affect momentum, like big picture momentum, was game changing. And so that's a tip, but also just a question for people. It's like, it seems like Darren, saying 100% numbers massively affect my mood, not learn how to manage it yet. And we could talk about some strategies that I have of how I manage that, because it's a huge problem with performance marketers. It's really bad. So yeah.
So why don't we, I'd love you to talk about that. Let's see what, I have Darren's comment up on the screen, but we'll go upwards of like the comments. And then once we finish the comments that have come in since,
perfect.
Then yeah, let's talk about that. So Darren Kirby said, "Hey Rich, thanks to you, I've become a huge fan of Maxwell." Cool. Straight line leading. The manifesto is awesome. Just checked in. Looking forward to hearing from Mighty Finn. You keep mentioning. Well, thanks, Stefan. Stefan is in Serbia, so he's always here. Tiago is on from Brazil. Isabella says, "Do you think a positive mindset is one of the key attributes for an entrepreneur?" I would say that you must be optimistic. I don't know that you need to be positive, right? Like, you have to believe that, like, it's worth it. Like, there's going to be something at the end. And in fact, like, every single client that I've had that was and is successful, pretty pervasively, I really can't think of any clients that I've had that didn't, like, fit this. They knew they were going to be successful. They didn't know that, like, they were going to be successful on this thing, right? But they had confidence that, like, at the end of the day, like, when they were done, like, whenever that was, like 30 years from now, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, whenever, that they were going to be in a very different position than they are now. And that confidence or optimism or positivity, whatever you want to call it, is what fuels through a lot of the tough times. Like, if you're not certain I am going to be successful one day, then when the shit hits the fan, it's a lot harder to deal with, because, like, you can look at that future date and say, like, it's going to be worth it. But if you don't believe that that's going to happen in the future, and the entrepreneurial path at times is not only, well, it's always an uncertain path, but at times it's an unpleasant path. If you don't, like, you got to have a reason to go through it. And for me, and what I've seen in my clients, is that certainty of ultimate success is like the power driver. What do you think? You disagree, agree? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to ask if you do something that I've been doing, which is like, this kind of answers
microdosing.
No, not microdosing. I had all my experiences in college. That's although we've had a few clients on the agency side that do that sell like tinctures and stuff. It's an interesting industry. But this may answer Darren's question a little bit, and also answer that question, which is, I think the reflection on all they've accomplished is something for me that's been very helpful, because I think we as entrepreneurs, we set goals and then we hit goals, but we never actually realize it's kind of like investing in the stock market, right? It's like some people that maybe have Apple right now, they have a massive amount of realized gains, but until you actually sell the stock, like or unrealized gains. Until they sell the stock, they don't have any realized gains, right? It's like until you actually sell the stock, you're actually not worth any necessarily more, but the stock can plummet tomorrow, right? And you're back to zero or negative. And so we don't celebrate, we don't kind of realize the gains. And so we're always setting the next goal and never looking back on all the goals we've accomplished. So what I've done a lot on the mindset side of things is when I'm having a day where I just feel like shit, like we lost a lot of money today. And listen, there's so many things that are happening in my head that I want to talk about because it's such a big topic. Like I'll talk about this and I'll go back to this. I'll pin a point on, if you want to remind me to talk about influencers and how the mainstream kind of media and people have affected this thought process. We'll go back to that. But like, if I'm having a bad day where I feel like this is just everything, I've lost all this money and it's terrible and my life's over and all this stuff, in my like journal, like in my notebook where I write my daily gratitude and my daily goals and all that stuff, I'll write down, I did this the other day, like I go back 10 years. And so I basically said, like, where was I at 10 years ago? And then I go 5 years and I go 3, then I go 1. And I just sat down and wrote. I just took a break, sat down and wrote, okay, what was my life like 10 years ago? What was going on? And then it was 5 and 3 and 1. And like, it's insane how much we've all accomplished, right? I don't care who you are. If you're an entrepreneur, you work hard, like you are 100% in a better situation today than you were 10 years ago. And I can pretty much guarantee you're probably in a better situation today than you were 5 years ago, probably 3, if you're constantly working, leveling up. But for me, it was really jarring. It was, 10 years ago, I was just starting my first company. I had no income. I was just out of college. Like I had nothing. I had literally nothing. Right. And then even 5 years ago, my last company had just failed. I lost a ton of investors' money that had put lots of money into this venture-backed startup. I lost family money. I had maxed out my credit cards. I had liquidated my 401k to pay for payroll. Like I was in a really awful place. And then 3 years ago was right before kind of Unicorn started. Equal thing. Quantum had ended. I had no job, no income, no prospects. Was living paycheck to paycheck, just trying to do some consulting work to get some money in. And so it's perspective, right? Because it's all relative failure and success. And so that was the biggest thing, like mindset wise. I know we went down a tangent here, but hopefully with Darren as well, is like taking a step back and just thinking and writing and understanding that, yeah, it sucks. We all want to make money every single day, but the world's not over. You're not going to lose your house or your cars or your lifestyle because you had one bad day. In the grand scheme of things, you probably won't even remember it in a few weeks or a few months. And so it's putting into perspective was a game changer. Mindset is so important, and mental health, and it's a whole topic that I think is not talked about a lot in our community, in our industry, but it is so important because mental health issues and stress and anxiety and depression, all that stuff is pervasive. It's something that everyone deals with in our industry at some point, but nobody talks about it. And because nobody talks about it, it doesn't seem like it's common. Because it doesn't seem like it's common, people don't want to talk about it and feel vulnerable to admit it. And it's this vicious circle that continues. I don't know how to fix it other than to speak about it, right? And other than to make people understand that it's like, it may seem like, Rich and I and other people like have it all figured out. Like, we live in this unicorn world where every day it's just another great cash flow day where it's raining profits and our companies are growing and everyone's out there driving exotic cars and stuff. But it's not the case, right? Like I have bad days and good days. Like, our performance side of the business, some of the offers we had that were crushing it just started tanking. Like we have things that were making us a lot of money that are losing us money now. Like we all deal with problems. We all deal with parts of the business that struggle and other things that do well. And I think people need to understand that. It's like we can get out here and talk about experience and the things we've done. We've had lots of successes, but we also have lots of failures. Like we're all human. We're all the same. We all have bad days and good days and days in between. And I think it's talking about it. It's the realization that the world isn't going to end. It's the reflection on where you were and where you are now, putting that in perspective instead of just constantly raising the barometer. of what your goal, what your happiness is going to be. But yeah, I mean, it's a big issue. It's probably something we could probably even do a whole other episode, just you and I talking about, because there's so much up to talk about. I know our conversation today is about
Right.
lifestyle entrepreneurship and growth entrepreneurship, so it's not really the topic today. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. But yeah, that's my rant and tangent on mental health.
Well, I've struggled with ADD. I've struggled with depression. I've struggled with a lot of things. So I totally get that. And one of the things this was just really interesting to me. And it kind of relates back to what you're talking about and the questions that were asked. At least not directly, but as a strategy that potentially helps. And that is that when I got really interested in transformation, the idea that by adjusting how someone sees the world, how their whole life can change immediately. And so I did 3 workshops at my office, and they were always limited because the first time I limited it to 8. I think the second time I did it with 25. And then I think the third time I did it with 10. I was playing with each time I did it with a different leader, because while I can rip apart anyone's business, I feel bad doing the same on a personal life. And also I don't know that I don't have the same. I feel very comfortable. I feel very comfortable in my performance in business. I don't know that I would recommend too many people living my mental health life as much as my business life. So I don't feel I have the authority oftentimes to speak on those things. But so I did these 3 transformation workshops, and in the first one, and I did it with different leaders, and this first one I did was with a psychologist who was really bright and very sharp. And that first one, we limited it to 8 people, and it sold out pretty quick. And really, those 8 people were all clients that I had long-standing relationships with, that had they'd made money numerous times in my stuff, and so hey, whatever Rich is selling, I'm just gonna buy. When they asked people at the end, in the testimonial reel, they asked why did you come, and one person answered I had no idea what it was, but I feel like I owe Rich a lot of money, and so anytime he sells something, I just want to buy it so that I'm feel better about how much he's helped me, right? So all 8 people in there are those people, right? And one of them came over to me and told me how much I changed their life, right? How dramatically different their life is then than it was before, right? And how much they credit having come in that we've come in contact. And it certainly isn't the first time I've heard it, and it certainly hasn't been the last time I've heard it. But the person said it, and I was like, oh, that's so nice of you to say it, and that was the end of the interaction. And the psychologist came over to me, and she was like, what the hell was that? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, that person was giving you a gift. That person felt truly impacted by the impact that you had on their life. And they wanted to share that with you, and you just said thanks and walked away, and you didn't spend any time taking in that gift. That person felt moved by you and was trying to do the same for you, and you didn't take it. You didn't stand there and just absorb the fact that you actually made a difference in that person's life, right? That you actually that was a gift that you could have felt good about all day, right? And instead, you just pushed it aside. And that was really fascinating to me because, she was 100% right. It didn't impact me at all. Nor all the other times prior that someone had said that to me, right? It was a nice thing to say, right? And I was happy that the person said it, but no, nothing more. And so the very next time someone said that to me, I spent time just really kind of in that moment imagining what that person is really trying to convey to me, right? How thankful they truly are, how proud I should be that I made that difference in their life, right? Not in my words, but just in my feeling, and really take a moment to feel it in my body, what the good thing that just happened on both sides, right? And it made a huge difference, right? And I think that So ever since that time, when anyone does tell me anything really nice, like I take time to absorb it, right? And it's kind of like recharging a battery, right? Like that, those positive things, oftentimes, at least for me, they were there, but I wasn't even grabbing them. Like I wasn't even using them. I was kind of like, whatever, and I wasn't even taking the opportunity. And there was just something that you said reminded me of something I had learned a long time ago from Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. Like I was never in Strategic Coach because we're kind of like, a lot of my clients, like after I help them grow, like they go over there, right? But like something he said in a Nightingale Conant program, which is a great program, by the way, called Pure Genius. It's like 6 of the most powerful ideas that Strategic Coach has for like $49. And one of them, he was talking about the only way that you can judge your performance is by looking backwards, because like your goals really should operate like a horizon, right? They just provide the trajectory. They just provide the direction, but you never get to the horizon. No matter how far you go, the horizon is always out there. Yeah. So if you're judging whether you get to the horizon, then you'll always be disappointed. Like there's nothing. But if you always like reflect backwards of like the progress you've made since whenever, right? Now you have like a barometer that can actually be more truthful, right? More accurate, more whatever. So, yeah. But like,
are there any times that you remember where like in the moment you felt a tremendous sense of accomplishment? Like not in hindsight, but like while it was happening, you were like, this, I've done something big, or like, this is like really like I've hit a huge goal, whether it was like speaking on a big stage or like releasing a product. Like, cause I'm thinking a lot about that too. It's like, I'm trying to think back on my life. Are there times where I like in the moment recognized the accomplishment and was able to like enjoy it, or has it all been retrospective?
No, I would say that I don't think it was healthy, right? But like the manifesto was such a surprise to me. And I think for a lot of people that like have found me since that time, they can't really imagine what that time was like. I feel like even talking about it makes it seem like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. This is something I wrote that I put on my blog, and I had no clue. Like, my whole life changed. Like, there was my life before that document, there's my life after, and they're totally different, right? Like, that one document changed my life. And so, it's been downloaded millions of times, but even when I first released it, like, it was already, like, it started picking up, like steam and momentum, like, that I just wasn't expecting, right? And, like, we launched it. Well, I released the manifesto in late June. I don't really know the timing of things, but when we released it, Wimbledon was the same time. So we released in June, and Wimbledon must be towards I think it was June 26th is when I released the manifesto, but I could be wrong. So sometime in either late June or early July is when Wimbledon is, I guess. And Wimbledon had while Wimbledon was going on, had the 550th like most popular website on the internet, like at that time, like on the Alexa 100, right, or 1000. And I was at 492. Like Strategic Profits had more traffic going to it, like than Wimbledon did during Wimbledon, and there were literally like people posting about it, so that all over the place all the time. And so I became so addicted to just hitting refresh, like on Google Blog Search, on Technorati, on like all these things. Because I was just blown away at like all these positive things being said about something that I had no idea when I wrote it was going to be received like that at all. So yeah, like definitely that was one of them. I remember like when I had the store, whenever we would break like a new record, like for the day, like also like that was a big kind of like, wow, like, cause like, we didn't know the store could bring in that much money in a day. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's not like a virtual store. Like at some point people don't want to wait 2 hours online at the cashier, right? Like, so And, if the store does, I don't even remember what our best day was, but let's say it was like $75,000, and I'm just making that up. It's just a clothing store. So for 75,000, that meant that there was the cash registers, and we had I think 6 in the store. That meant that no one was ever stopping. They were ringing up sales the whole time, right? So yeah, I've definitely been impacted in the moment and been wow. And I think that's more it. When I'm totally taken off guard is when that feeling happens.
I don't know how you can't really make these things exist in the same world. So it's hard. I don't even know how you could really effectively do this, but it seems and I'm the same way, that the moments that I remember most in terms of recognizing it and being excited and really wow, were the times where I didn't have expectations or really clear goals. And I think that's a weird thing, because you need to set goals, and you can't just run a business with 0 goals and expectations. But at the same time, by setting goals, you basically now set a barometer to measure. And usually your goals are going to be ambitious. And so even if you do something really great, but it's kind of, you hit your goal or a little above your goal, it isn't as fulfilling or rewarding as I remember when we did our Trump coin, I had 0 expectations. I had no idea who's going to buy in 2016 a dollar coin with a sticker of Trump on it.
Right.
0, right? This could just be a huge flop. We had some baseline expectations because Kevin did the Obama coin and told us his numbers, but we had no idea. Maybe we'll sell a few hundred coins. And I remember once it started to take off, and we were doing, initially it was a few $1,000s and $10,000, $20,000 a day, and then inauguration day doing, I think $200,000, $300,000 in a single day. It was just this is incredible. The high you get, the fulfillment, the just gratification that you have for that is unexplainable. But at the same time, it's how do you navigate those two things, right? Because it's one, by not having the goals expectations, you increase fulfillment and happiness in the moment because you have no benchmark to fail. So everything that you do is usually it's going to be better, but it makes it a lot harder to actually accomplish more things if you don't have any clear goals. And I was just, as you were talking, and as I was thinking, I was that's a weird thing. That the happiest in the moments I've had in business have been times where something unexpected happened and it wasn't planned. And it's weird. I don't even know. There's not even a question there. It's just it's a strange observation that I'm having now, and I don't know how to replicate it.
Well, I think I told you this privately, in conversations. I think maybe I didn't. Maybe I've said it. I've not hidden this fact. So I've definitely said it publicly a gazillion times. But I think we even talked about it.
It's a big secret.
Yeah. But when I had when my midlife crisis started, I don't know how old I was, 40, 38, whatever. It was precipitated by the fact that I had achieved all my goals that I had, and I wasn't happy, and this started down a very bad path. But I was okay, I achieved all these goals. I was happy for a week or two after achieving them. I'm not happy now, and now what? And I was what's the point of having goals if when you achieve them, you're only happy for a week or two? And so then I thought, well, maybe you shouldn't have goals, and that didn't really work out too well. And so then I realized, though, that I am happiest, and it's kind of weird because I'm trying to balance this, and I'm not looking for answers on this yet, but it's just out there in the back of my head. I am happiest when I'm in pursuit. Doesn't matter what I'm in pursuit of, but when I'm in pursuit, in every area of my life. I remember I didn't have my first girlfriend until college, and I was a sophomore and she was a senior, and we went out for a year, and then she did Teach for America and she moved away, and then she found someone else, and I was miserable and life sucked. And then I saw this girl that I thought was absolutely beautiful, and I made it my goal to be I wanted her to be my girlfriend, and I wanted to be worthy of that. And so, like, all of a sudden, like, I was going to the gym every day. I was doing, like all of a sudden now my life had a purpose. Now, not the best purpose in the world, but like now I was purposeful, right? Because I was engaged in some kind of pursuit. And so ever since that time, I've always reflected on my goals. Like, my goals are really irrelevant. The only thing that I'm not saying that you can't play this game in business, but in your personal life you can. That the only reason for goals is to get you engaged in life. And if your goal is something that excites you, great. And if it isn't, then you don't have the right goal. And I've had, I don't want to say like countless clients because it hasn't been. I've had several clients that where we've adjusted their goal and it made all the difference. And the goal could have been actually reduced. But the way it was broken down made it so that it was different. So like an example, right? Like I had a client and, okay, so let's say there's 5 days in a week, right? Like 50 weeks, 250. Okay. So let's say that like the goal was to make $2 million a year, like revenue, like in their coaching program. I'm just trying to make easy numbers. And that like, and he was rebounding, so he was doing everything himself in the beginning. Like he had a big setback, and now like he wanted to like regrow. But the idea of like bringing in $2 million over the next year was very not exciting to him, right? Like didn't really motivate him. And I was like, okay, well, like what if it was 10,000 a day? What if like you got into the office every day at 8 or whenever you get in, and your goal was to make that 10,000 that day as quickly as possible, and your day is done when you make that 10,000. So it becomes a game of like how quickly can you bring in, like, because they were selling coaching programs on the phone, right? Like your day ends or your obligation to the business ends after you hit that 10,000. And so it's very clear, like every morning the goal is clear, 10,000 today. And believe it or not, like that was enough. Like it was just about like changing the goal around because now he had something to pursue in the moment, like each day, as opposed to this like far out thing, right? That either he didn't have the confidence in or just didn't seem as concrete to him, like, or the impact, too far down the road. But, I often feel like, it's like a lot of times, and I think we've kind of like danced around this concept numerous times in numerous of our conversations that, a lot of times people think the problem is them when really like it's like the way they're running their life is the problem, not who they are as a person, right? Like, in that conversation with that entrepreneur, he's like, I'm just not motivated. Like, I think there's like something wrong with me. And there wasn't anything wrong with him. It's just like the goals weren't motivating. And we needed to find motivating goals, right? And it's like the conversation I know we had in the past about like most people designing businesses that are not designed about who they are. And then later on when they're disappointing their business, they feel like they're flawed, right? When really they could be flawed. I mean, I'm flawed, but like they didn't design their business around those flaws. So that now they feel like they're disappointing their business and there's something wrong with them. I do the same. Like I often internalize like my like where I don't hit the mark as like the default is like I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm flawed, I'm right. Not that I'm approaching it wrong or that like there's some other explanation. Like the default immediate response in my head is like, why are you such a fuck up? Like, right? Like, like that kind of thing, which is really not helpful. What's interesting to me, the thing I was going to say is that like, so really like pursuit is all about desire, in my opinion, right? Like, recognizing that when that desire is fulfilled, it really doesn't mean anything, but you need to have that desire. Like I need to have that desire, right, to fuel me forward. And yet, like when I study like spirituality, like Buddhism and anything like that, it's all about the absence of desire, right? Like the goal is to have an absence of desire. And when I think about that, I'm like, oh, that would be like death. Like that was what I felt in my early 40s, like the absence of desire, right? Like there's nothing to pursue. Like there's just, it is what it is, right? And that makes sense on a spiritual level, but I haven't yet like kind of brought those two together in a way that makes sense.
I don't know if that's even true though. Like, but can you hear me? It looks like it froze. Are you back?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Um,
Oh, and you know what? By the way, before you even go there.
okay.
Wait, before you go there.
Yeah.
I can tell that I totally spaced on this, but I can tell you didn't take up my recommendation to get Crisp AI. Don't play with it now, because because if you have Crisp AI, like those like beeping sounds and everything, we wouldn't hear them. Like it takes every noise out except your voice. I think you played with it when we were talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It was such a horrible user experience and destroyed everything on my computer that I just gave up on it. Well, we have
anyway,
our video guy built an algorithm that like removes all that stuff in the background when we upload it. So I don't have anything for the live, but we got it for post. No, but the absence of desire thing, religion, I feel is almost the exact opposite. I think religion is like the perfect example of motivating by it's like the horizon thing, right? You're never going to hit because the goal is something that nobody actually has proof of, right? Like nobody's actually gone both ways. I died. I saw the pearly gates and everything they said is true. And now I'm back and now everyone is aware of that. It's the pursuit of those things. And there's all these ideals that have been built in to make people a better person and more virtuous and more caring, all in the hope that they achieve that goal, but the goal's never truly realized, and nobody knows if the goal is realized. And so I think desire just has like has like a negative connotation.
Got it.
But I mean, at the end of the day, like I don't think, and I could be wrong here. Like I think if people didn't have a desire to like live in an eternal heaven, that religions would work, right? I think that's like it's all built on. I think again, it's just like the word itself, desire, sounds like I'm selfish and I need these things for me. But at the end of the day, it's like most people don't operate in an altruistic way where it's like I'm living my life this way so everyone else is happier and the world's better. They might say that, but like at a fundamental level, people are like, I'm living my life this way because I'm told that if I live my life this way, that I get this thing over here, and I don't want to spend eternity burning in hell, right? Like I want to spend eternity over here. I want to spend eternity in this amazing, beautiful place. So yeah, again, the religion's an interesting one because it's as a marketer, and we can pivot real quick from this because this is never a safe conversation. But as a marketer and somebody that's like, it fascinates me, just like the history of it and the beliefs people have and their motivations and goals and how you're able to get all these people to act in a way for a specific goal and purpose. It's an amazing thing that it's generations outlasted technology, scientific innovations, technological innovations, generations of people. And it's today just as strong as it was 1,000 years, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. I'm not even going to ask this question because this will go down a rabbit hole. So I'll stop it there.
Okay.
And we can talk about it at a later time.
Okay, so you asked me to remind you when you were talking about influencers and how they affect the thought process. That's all I wrote down. So
yeah,
hopefully that's enough.
So it is enough. So I think the problem, this goes back to like the initial question about like goals and how do I avoid the negative thinking and stuff. That's where this thought came up from. A lot of it is inflicted by our industry in the pursuit of acquiring customers on the info product side of the business, because all we see all day, and I'm sure anybody watching this video right now or listening to the podcast later probably sees, I would venture to say 8, 10 plus ads a day across YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and stuff that are featuring somebody, usually a young guy, and it's a video of that young person either in a beautiful house or on a beach or in front of a car, and they're talking about the things they have, the success they have, and how they can teach it to you. That's much cookie cutter 101 selling lifestyle, using lifestyle to sell an informational product. And the problem is there isn't anybody out there on social media. We have this amazing technology, this amazing innovation in our life that allows everyone to be connected, allows everyone to share anything they want at any time, be a content creator, be a producer. It's amazing. The problem, though, is that nobody, I wouldn't say nobody, there are people that do this, but very, very, very few people are actively wanting to promote all the pain, suffering, and terribleness in their life. Like, nobody gets up in the morning and says, I could share this edited photo from my trip to Bali, or I could record a video of the fact that I feel so unmotivated, about my life, right? People don't have that. And so because nobody sees it, they think it doesn't exist. And so if all you see are ads and content promoting, how great my life is, you start to believe that everybody's got a great life, that like I must be doing something wrong and my life isn't good enough, because it seems like every time I go on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any of these channels, everyone is living this fairy tale world where everyone somehow has luxury cars and goes on vacations all the time and has all these things, and I don't have these things, and so I feel like a failure. But it's very easy to go on a vacation somewhere and shoot a bunch of footage, and then throughout the rest of the year share that footage on a drip to make it seem like you live every day like that. And there are a lot of people who do that. Like that's a big chunk of social media on the influencer side. So I think it's important to take that with a grain of salt, right? It's like to just, and I think most people know that, but they don't actually like let it register. Yeah. Right. It's like they understand it at fundamental, but they don't let it sink in. So they still let it dictate their mood and their emotions and how they feel about themselves, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I would agree. And I got 2 points that, like, based on what you were talking about. One, I'm surprised it would make sense. Like, one of the key tenets of what I teach and when it comes to marketing relates to what you just talked about. But first, let's talk about like the people like in front of their luxury cars. I've been playing this game like for close to 20 years now, and what people don't get is that, like, and I think I've talked about this on one of these live streams before, that most people, like, a lot of those guys play the short game, they don't play the long game. Like, you won't, like, back in 2008 when like Gary Vaynerchuk and I went to the first South by Southwest together, or the second, I don't remember which one, like Gary plays the long game. There's no pictures of Gary in front of a Rolls Royce. Like, that's not his MO, right? And he feels the same way about it than I do. It's a short game because it's easy to sell like people wet behind the ears but you will never have like the best customers, because the best customers, the ones who succeed, the ones that can then like come to Florida for a transformation workshop, not even knowing what it is, like those customers don't respond to that, right? It's only the people who want results without work that also, kind of go down that road. And even people who are willing to do the work, like if they're pursuing that, odds are they're not going to do the work necessary. So like they keep themselves small actually by that facade, and they're playing a short game. And I've seen God knows how many gurus have come and gone, disappeared, now work at some car dealership or God knows what else. But at one point in time, they were like ruling the world and really thought they had it figured out, but they were playing the short game. The other thing, though, on the marketing side, like a lot of my reports, so Kayvon asked me a question basically about like, could I replicate the manifesto success? And my answer would be no, I cannot do that. What I can do is I can write a report that has all the same elements that made the manifesto work in it, right? And that was another reason why I stopped at the number of reports I stopped, because my last report was my second best report compared to the manifesto as far as spread and sales and all those things. And it took me 7 reports to figure out why the first one worked so well, right? So like I had figured it out. But like there are other factors that I didn't control, like the timing and the right place at the right time with the right message, right? So I don't think like I know if I did it enough times using the right format, like eventually maybe I would, but I can't engineer that kind of success. But
That's a big one.
what?
What you just said, that's the timing. I think was it Outliers? I forget which book talks about like you can't just be the smartest person with the right idea with the right thing and also be successful. You also have to be put in the right time. So it's even like some of the best NHL players, the best MLB players, they happen to be born in certain months that gave them they entered
Right.
like Little League or at a certain time that gave them a certain advantage. Or like, if Steve Jobs was born in 1900, like probably would end differently, right? If Steve Jobs was born today, it would end differently. It's like all the universe is aligning, right? And it's the smart person with the right idea, but also has to be the right idea at the right time. And even those people, look at like Nikola Tesla, like the dude was burling all the right ideas, but like none of it was kind of realized in his lifetime. The guy died broke and destitute, and nobody cared about him. And now it's all he was right about all these things and everything, but he was a guy ahead of his time. If he was born today, maybe it would be game changing, the things that he would make, and he'd be taken seriously. But yeah, like the manifesto, it's interesting. You said it's the timing it just triggered that for me, because it's so important. It's like the right content put out at the right time in the market.
The same decision could be the right decision or the wrong decision depending on the timing, right? Like the same exact, right? But the other thing on the marketing side, like this is the statement that has guided my reports. It's guided a lot of the way I market and sell, and that is that which is most personal is most general. That it's the things that are most personal to us that we don't share with other people that we actually share with everyone. And we all are walking around not sharing it, right? Because so it's like I remember the first 2 years I struggled online, and I would be asking myself, and excuse the profanity, but these were the words, like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, why are all these people doing so much better than me? I think I'm as smart, if not smarter than them. I'm working harder than I've ever worked. Like, what is wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me, right? Now, that, like, over the years, I have heard people tell me that exact same story countless times, right? Countless times. The only place where, like, I think my ego has served me was in this belief that if I'm struggling with something, a lot of other people must be. And so, like, and I kind of maybe took a cop-out way, because when I wrote about it, I didn't even attribute it to my old self, right? I just said, a lot of people that I talk to feel this way, right? And it resonated with people because they're like, that's me, right? And now they feel like I'm describing them. Now, I'm really describing my old self, right? They think that I'm standing over their shoulder watching them, right? Like, he's describing my, like, situation. No, I'm describing my old situation, but nobody shares that situation. Todd Brown had that time where he was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, why am I not able to do it, right? So if you're in that moment where you're asking yourself that question, and all of a sudden you get some document that says, like, talks about that question and asking yourself, it now has your total attention, right? And not to skew too much maybe on the marketing side today, but like, my belief is one of the biggest barriers, and I learned this from Dan Kennedy. I think I've inflated it in my mind to mean more than even what he thinks, but he was kind of laid it out first, that one of the hardest, especially with info products, one of the hardest obstacles to overcome is to get the prospect, to believe that this applies to them. And, right, like Dan Kennedy used to have signs at the back of his events, right, big signs that said, my business is different. Because no matter what, like, numerous times over the course of the event, like if he was doing a hot seat or something, someone would say, well, that wouldn't work in my business. My business is different. He'd be like, yeah, look at that sign. That's what everybody says, right? And so that's an easy way to be dismissive. This does not apply to me. Right? Like that's the easiest way. And when we're going through ads, like if we're going through a magazine, the reason we're able to go through all those and not look at every ad is because we assume, right, we're making the snap decision, this doesn't apply to me. It doesn't apply to me, right? And so when you're able to articulate like the negative thoughts that are going on in someone's head, that excuse is gone. Like this is the opposite now. This totally applies to me. This was written for me. I need to read this right now, and then I need to share it with other people that I know to see if they agree that this is written about me, right? And so, those things are often not spoken about, but those are the things that everybody has that everyone keeps quiet about, and that's like humanity, in my opinion, like across the board. Which is like kind of.
It's super important. I mean, I think and it becomes increasingly more difficult over time, the more successful you get, to maintain relatability, right? I think that's where people struggle as well. Is like they believe that, like we talked about before, we've talked about this plenty of times. People are either running away from something, running towards something, right? Those are the two most fundamental drivers of why we do what we do. And I think a lot of people in our space assume that people want to run towards something, which is the cars and the flashy things. But like most people can't see they can't see past that gap of like, how do I get there? Like you're showing me all these things you have, and I have obviously want those things, but like it seems impossible for me to get those things because I'm here today wondering how I'm going to pay rent, and you're talking about your Lamborghini and your AP watch and things, that are just foreign to me. I'd love to have them, and I think that's, if you can't make that path very visible to that person, you've lost them already. Like if they can't see that there's a line for me to follow that makes this achievable and realistic for me, you can show all the flashy stuff you want. It's very, very difficult. Luxury brands can do it, right? Rolex and Rolls Royce and stuff. They don't have to show you how to make money, and they can still be very successful. But like for what we're doing, which is we're trying to sell, if you buy this and do this, you'll achieve this. Making yourself relatable, like you talked about. I mean, that's critical.
Yeah, I mean, and it's well, it's not so much relatable. It's more about letting the person on the other side of the screen feel like you get them. You understand what they're going through. Like, because like most of us feel misunderstood. We don't feel like really anyone truly understands us, what we're dealing with, or whatever else. Like, I don't know, but, and so that like calls out to people in a way that is extremely powerful. And it happened to me when I read my first ADD book. Like, I'm like, this was written about me. Like, but the other thing is that, and this kind of can lead us right back to the topic today, is that like when I first started online, and we've had numerous conversations, you and I, about entrepreneurship, and like, growing up in an entrepreneurial household, like what impact did that have? Like studying entrepreneurship in college, right? Most of the, look, like especially earlier on, like nowadays, people grow up and they might want to be like do online marketing, right? They cover it in even college, right? Back in the early days, no one who was doing online marketing had that as their original ambition. Like that was not like, it didn't exist when they were younger. So they kind of like fell into it. Like they didn't study it in college. If they went to college, they didn't like, so early on in the early days of online marketing, like most people had like zero business experience or business knowledge, and their understanding of business for the most part came from reading sales letters, right? that are really for the most part fantasies, and like that until like I used to always tell my clients, like, read as many autobiographies from like successful entrepreneurs as you can, and you'll see that their lives do not line up with what is being promised in any sales letter. It's never as easy. It's never like, it never happens that way. that doesn't mean there aren't great products. There are great products out there, but like it doesn't ever go down as smoothly as advertised, right? Like, and that's across the board, right? If you drink Bud Light, all of a sudden a bunch of pretty women aren't going to come running into your room, and there's going to be a party. And if you drive a fancy car, not everyone's head is going to turn and think you're uber successful and want to know you, and whatever else every other ad like kind of the subtext promise. But yeah, so I think a lot of people like it's actually kind of interesting, and I got online to be a lifestyle entrepreneur, and actually like I thought I was going to like I had refined my marketing chops by like marketing hypnosis, right? I thought I knew everything about marketing because I'd had like the music business and the clothing business, and those were like successful. But that's a very different type of advertising. That's more image. And when I came time to advertise the hypnosis centers, the worse the ad was, in my opinion, the uglier it was, the more embarrassing it was, the more like the better it did. The more I liked it, the more sleek designed it was, the more hip, cool, the worse it did. And so that's what made me learn direct response. And then, we grew to 13 million or our weight there. And then 9/11 happened. And then I was like supporting like over 100 employees, trying to make payroll every, 2 weeks. And when I had enough of that and needed to figure out what I wanted to do next, like the whole appeal of the internet was like, I get this marketing stuff. I could put this marketing in place. I don't need 100 employees. This could all be automated, and I could just be like at the beach checking my laptop that's the way it was advertised. Like I could be checking my laptop for an hour a day from the beach and enjoying life. And I know that I already knew how to market because like I had taken like the number of calls from a like full page ad in the Daily News from like 40 calls from a full page ad to 450 calls just through split testing and modifying over the years, right? So I figured like I'll put this in place and like all my marketing will be automated, and I'll just like pop in every once in a while, like to check my growing accounts from the beach. And it didn't work out like that. And that's what set me on a path to try and like create an online business that was different than every offline business I had ever created. And when I realized that, that's when I was like, oh, okay, I just bought into bullshit, and now I'm going to have to pivot to like run this like every other business I've ever run. But so like that whole internet lifestyle is kind of like inherent in that promise, right? Is that you can have a lifestyle business and also have everything that you want. That's what's peddled by like the guy, right? Like the people out in their Ferraris or Lamborghinis or what have you. But you know what? Like,
what do you think about
the one other thing, like, so Tim Sykes, who's like a really well-known penny stock guru, whose online persona is very different from his real, like who he is really. I don't know him that well, but like based on the limited interaction I have, he's nowhere near, he's a nice guy. He's not obnoxious and brash, and he's like, and he gives a lot of money away to charity, and he does a lot of nice things. And he would prefer to drive like a Jeep. But like the guy that runs his business knows that when he's out in front of his Lamborghini, there are more clicks, there are more sales, right? Like there are more, he's selling like penny stock trading, so there's an element of like get rich quick to it, right? And so like that message really matches. And when he does pictures of him doing like his charity work, like those get no clicks. Like that's not what the dream is, right? The dream is to have everything and do nothing, to get like to somehow like get into a revolving door of success and not have to push the door because there's someone in front of you and behind you that's pushing the door, and you can kind of just skate there. But I bought into that, and it wasn't until I realized that that was a crock. But I didn't like necessarily then go hire like a bunch of people. But what I did realize is that there were just things that like other people could do better than me, that I needed to start outsourcing more. Those outsourcing people needed to become more like team members, people I could rely on, right? Like, and stuff like that. But any thoughts about that? Or we can go to questions, or we can try and tie it back into what we're talking about.
Well, I'm curious, like, somebody like Tim, like, what do you think about that just in general? The like dichotomy of, and I know quite a few people are like this who have a persona they put on for business, and then they're a totally different person off business. The reason I bring that up is because like I've struggled with that for years with our info business. Like I know for a fact that if I acted completely opposite to who I am as a human being,
right,
and became super flashy and wore something other than sweatpants and a backwards hat every day, and like cared about all that stuff, like, yeah, I probably would get a lot more engagement on ads. I get a lot more students, I'd imagine. But it's also like, I guess part of it is, one, it's exhausting. It's hard enough to do this in general.
Well, what I would say is like for someone like you or for someone like me, it's exhausting because that's not what we aspire to, right? And for someone like right, and for someone like Tim, it's exhausting. But there are a lot of people. I wouldn't necessarily say that everyone else is like an act, like whether like that's what either they have or that's what they aspire to, that's what they desperately want, and so they rent the Airbnb and they rent those cars for the day, they take the pictures out in front, or maybe they own them, either way. But for some people it's not onerous, it's what they want, right?
Oh no, I agree. No, there's a good amount of people that's what they are. I'm saying for like people like Tim and stuff, like, so I've always made a different choice, which is, and you made a different choice, like we could do these things but we don't. And like, and when you see an ad from me, when you see me, like, and you see me in person, I'm the exact same person. Like you're going to get the exact same person no matter how you interact with me. So I'm curious, like just at a high level, your thoughts for people that are watching too, thinking, hey, I want to do info, and like I could do this thing which compromises who I'm as a person to some extent, and it's going to be exhausting and draining. I might make more instant money, it might have more instant gratification, or I could be who I am and I don't get maybe as much instant success because I'm not hitting that bottom of the barrel, get rich quick, but I'm getting higher quality clients and I'm not exhausting myself and I don't feel like a bad person when I go to sleep at night. I'm just curious like what your thoughts are, or like recommendations people that are watching.
Well, I think I might have mentioned this on the last live stream, but I'm not sure if I did or not. But I had this conversation when I was back in Miami right before I left. I've got this friend, Mike Zappi, who was this is like a quick tangent. He was one of the original domainers. Like he sold beer.com for $8 million. I think it's the most expensive domain that was ever sold. And like he hit me up like like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and he's like, hey, I hadn't spoken to him in like, I don't know, 5-6 years. And he's like, hey, I shot this documentary. I'd love you to take a look at it. Tell me what you think. And I wasn't really necessarily looking forward to like sitting down and watching like, I don't know, a 90-minute documentary on something that I wasn't even sure would be something I was interested in or whatever. But it turns out like it was something I was very interested in. It actually like I never seen any of the Fast and Furious movies, but whoever like the Hispanic woman who's like part of that series,
Michelle Rodriguez,
I think that's her. He took her down to Costa Rica to do ayahuasca, and that was what the documentary was about. And I really should say the name of the documentary, and if I knew the name, I would say it because I should give him a little plug, but I forgot the name, and I apologize, Mike. But he's just done another one that's going to be coming out soon, like with Netflix or like much bigger, with the guy Lamar Odom. And he took him down south to do ibogaine and a bunch of other things to help him completely overcome his addictions. And it was like in a 24-hour span, like the before and after picture is insane, right? So anyway, he was doing this like kind of meditation kind of thing like the weekend before I was leaving. And as a spur of the moment, I had no plans on a Saturday night, so I was like, I'm gonna go with Zappy. I'm gonna hang out with him and his more earthy, crunchy crowd that I'm used to. I dig those people. It's just not who I am, right? And so I was talking to this one woman, Masha, and she said something that really stuck with me. And she's like, I try to live my life in a way that no one ever regrets trusting me. And I think that's really powerful. Like, you know, because at the end of the day, all you really have is your reputation. And if you have a stellar reputation, you can always make things happen. People will be there for you. Like, because, right? And And that's not necessarily the reason to do it. I mean, maybe it's to be a good person, because like when you violate trust, it kind of sucks. But I think that that's like a great thing to aspire to as a human being. And obviously that's like 100% in conflict with being like the Tom. You might be too young, but do you know who Tom Wu is?
I don't know.
Okay, so Tom Wu. Oh, the documentary is called The Reality of Truth. That was Mike Zappi's first. And it's really good. I enjoyed it. And I told him that afterwards. Lost my train of thought. Before the documentary, what did I just ask you? And you said you hadn't?
You're asking about Tom Wu.
Yeah, so Tom Wu was one of the first infomercials. This predates Tony Robbins. And he became a professional poker player. He actually won the World Series of Poker. But before he did that, he was a real estate guru. And I don't know whether he's Chinese or Korean or Japanese, like he's Asian, right? And talks with a really strong Asian accent. And he's a very little man. And there'd be him in front of his cars, and he'd be like, "You want cars like this?" And then the next, like the next beat would be him in a jacuzzi with like 7 women. He's like, "You want women like this?" And then like next, it's in front of his house. "You want a house like this? Then come to my seminar." So, like, and I teach you, like, and it was like all the time. And so it became a meme before there were memes. Like Saturday Night Live made fun of it. It's been on South Park. It's been on like all of those kind of shows that like kind of make fun of like societal type stuff. But yeah, like that was the very first of those. He was probably the originator. Well, I don't know if he's the originator of that, but he was the kind of one of the pioneers of standing in front of your Lamborghinis and mansions, and and just kind of hilarious. And it's like, and I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm above that. Like, I'm above doing that, right? Like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want my kids to be embarrassed because, like, when their last name gets typed into a search engine, it's shit, And one of the most proudest things, like, when I did this launch in 2012, the first video that, like, started the launch was a video of me, and there was a button to the right of the video, and my credentialization, or like whatever you want to call that, like in the video was like on the button on the right is like on the right there's a button, press that button, it'll open up a new window, it'll do a search for my name in quotes in Google. In that, like, that was when I was much more active, right? Like, so I don't know how many pages there are about me now, but back then there was like 250,000 or something like that. And I was like, that's all you need to do. Like, you don't need to read, like, I can show you a bunch of testimonials, but there's 250,000 pages about me. You'd be hard pressed to find anything bad. And you might feel some people like might say that like it wasn't for them, but you'll never find anything, right? Like, and that made me proud. Like, it made me extremely proud to be able to say something like that. But I think that long term, like, yeah, success is so much about networks and who you know and who's willing to do you a solid, and no man is an island or woman, and like I don't think you can be, and I don't mean this in a metaphysical. Oh, so it's 2 things I was going to say that before I went off on the tangent. One is I don't think I'm above it. Like, from a standpoint that I fall victim, like, everybody wants things easy, fast, and, like, we don't want to do the hard work. That's the human condition, right? Like, and so I would be lying if I said that, like, when a friend of mine is talking about something easy, like, all of a sudden my ears don't peak up a little bit and, like, want to learn that strategy, or, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just the way we're wired. But on the flip side, like, I don't want to be that person. Right, like that makes their life about that, and your reputation at the end of the day is all you got. Like, at least out in the world, and it precedes you, especially nowadays. And based on even like the stuff that you've done or the stuff I've done, we can get access to different people than other people who haven't done what we've done. Right, like our reputation precedes us, and And that's why I think like always playing the short game is always the mistake, because like you don't recognize, one, what it's costing you, and then two, I don't know, like you grew up affluent, I grew up somewhat affluent, you had ups and downs, my parents had ups and downs too, right? But the people that I knew that were the most upset were the people that grew up with a lot and then lost it all. Like, because they had a very clear frame of reference now of what they didn't have, right? Like, better to have been born into a broken childhood than to have had a magical childhood for the first couple of years and then have it be completely broken, because now you are aware that what you're living is not normal, as opposed to, this is just normal, right? Like, so it's the same thing. And when you play the short game, you're kind of setting yourself up for that disappointment later on in life. Like where at one time money was easy, at one time you were living large, but now it's not easy. Now you have a different reputation. Those pages don't go away of you in front of those Lamborghinis, like, and stuff like that. And now when you have to drive a Hugo or whatever, like, there's a disconnect, right? And it makes you seem like,
you don't like losing things.
Yeah, it makes you seem like just a total fraud.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Like downsizing, it's way harder, right? Yeah, I mean, and it's just personally, it's the loss aversion, right? It's like we don't like to lose what we have. Once we have it, we don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's so much more powerful and impacts us. So it's, if you don't have a mansion and a Lamborghini, it's like it doesn't impact you as much not having it as it does if you had those things and now you're living in a 1-bedroom apartment and you're taking the bus, right? It's you had those things, you lost those things, and you're used to those things. So now your life feels a lot worse. Whereas, hey, if that's the way you ran your life, like for me, we lived in a normal apartment for pretty much up until we built this house. Like that's where you're comfortable. You're used to that. Like, I don't need any more space, right? You're not going backwards. Going backwards is really painful.
Well, that, and also, and you like when's the baby due?
October 3rd.
Okay, so like for me, having kids was a game changer. Like, because before I had kids, I felt like I could always risk everything, and if I lost everything, what's the big deal? Like, I go sleep on a friend's like couch, I regroup, right? Like, no biggie. Yeah. Like, it's an experience. Life is an experience. There's ups, there's going to be downs, like whatever. As soon as I had kids, though, it's like my kids aren't going to be sleeping on someone else's couch. Like, that ain't like, so like my risk aversion. I'm not that risk averse, but like I certainly was a lot less risk averse like prior to having kids, right? And once they're both done with college, like maybe I'll go back to my normal risk averse ways. But certainly having kids,
to spend a month out there.
Yeah. But yeah, so to tie everything that we talked about together, and I don't even know if we can, this kind of, Maxwell and I talk a lot off camera, but through the lens, there is a good question here that I think maybe this one should be the one that we end with. But then after this, feel free to go in any direction you want for a few minutes. I really wonder about this. I would have answered this question differently. And the question is, don't you think the pandemic has made people reflect on what is most important in their life? And
it's a great question from Charlotte.
What do you think? Or do you want me to answer first? I'm down either way.
I can start. It's a really good question. And I agree with what she said before about, I think she talked about Anik and his program in India building schools, which he's just he's a great guy doing amazing things. But yeah, I totally agree, Charlotte. There are a lot of the guys that have been in the game, the women that have been in the game for a while. It's because they're doing the right thing and they actually have bigger purposes. I still think, as somebody that has a Facebook group with 30,000 plus marketers in it and teaches a lot of marketers and stuff, there still unfortunately is a lot of people selling the flash. So I'd like to think that there's less now, but I see just as much today as I did a few years ago.
I think there's just as much.
For whatever that's worth. But I do agree that it's not everybody. And the good ones are doing bigger things. So totally agree with that. On the pandemic side of things, that's an interesting thing. I think it's 100% making people reflect on priorities and what they need, what they don't need. I think it's more interesting it's happening faster at a business level. I think you're seeing businesses realize, like, We don't need big offices. We don't need, there's certain things that they didn't think forever Goldman Sachs never probably would have thought like we need less office space, right? But like now we can run a massive investment bank with remote workers. So I think people are definitely reflecting and changing in that world. I think in the personal world, I think there's definitely people that are reflecting and realizing like what's most important. They're valuing friendships and socialization and simple things. My wife and I the other day were talking about like, we're big movie buffs. We love movies. And like we would always, it's one of the things we would do as a couple, like when we had like a shitty weekend or shitty day, like let's just go see a movie, even if there wasn't anything good.
Right.
And that was like an escape for us. We'd always do that. And like, we haven't done that in 6 months. And like that you take it for granted, like just going to a movie. Right. So I think, yes, people are reflecting on the little things.
Dead for a minute.
Okay.
Now we're back on.
Yeah.
So now go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
But I only lost you about it like
so
2 seconds ago. So I think everybody heard most of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a good chunk of people that this is real to them. And because it's real to them, they're reflecting on what's most important and all that stuff. I do think there's a lot of people, who don't believe what's happening as being real, or not as serious. And I think if you're in that group, because of that, you're not like reflecting on as much in that vein because it's not as tangible. So I think a lot has to do with where you fall on that spectrum, right? I'm not going to make a statement. I'm just saying just that's the reality. There's groups of people that believe different things right now. And I think so ironically, they both are reflecting, but reflecting differently. I think the one group over here that isn't a big believer in what's happening, either they don't believe in it at all, or they believe it's not as serious and there's a government overreach. They're reflecting on like my ability to open my gym, my ability to have freedoms, those things. I think that group is really reflecting heavily on things that you take for granted, like being able to go and shop at a business I want to shop at, or eat where I want to eat, or go where I want to go, which is a fundamental freedom that people are losing. But then the other side of people that, this is 100% real. This is the right response from the government. And they're reflecting on those more things like family and friendships and be able to just hug people and be able to be close, within 6 feet of each other. So yeah, either way, I think people are definitely reflecting what's most important. I think what they're reflecting on though is different. And that's kind of interesting to me. What's most important to groups of people that are experiencing the same thing, but experiencing that thing very differently.
Yeah. And I would agree with that there's, that, this whole thing has impacted people differently. And, if you lost your job or if you had like, a business in Manhattan, like a local business that has been decimated, like because you've been forced to pay rent, or you get and you're just like, you're screwed, right? Like 40% of the businesses already have gone out of business in Manhattan. I don't think those people are being very reflective right now. I think when you're in when you're in a scary situation, and fear is totally appropriate, there's really not much time for reflection. It's kind of like if you're starving, all you can think about is food. If you're worried about your like livelihood and how you're going to support yourself and whether you're going to get kicked out of your house and all the other things that come with it, it's very hard to be reflective. And I think that, then there are a lot of people that are not in that situation, and either they've kind of gone one way or the other. It's kind of either like been debauchery or improvement, one way or the other. I don't think we have any idea of how this is all going to play out on a societal level, like at all. But it ain't like, I don't know if you've seen this. It's just been very present to me because of Agora, because Altucher and I used to be in the same division. And so James Altucher wrote a essay about how New York is dead, and not coming back. And that went super viral. I saw Glenn Beck reading the whole article. They were quoting it on Fox News. It was in the New York Post. It went everywhere, and it hit national news. And Jerry Seinfeld replied saying Altucher's a moron, New York will certainly rebound and stuff like that. And so I've been watching that, and my opinion is that New York will always rebound, but I don't think it's rebounding anytime soon. And my girlfriend Kim, who manages, like, who used to, before she retired, worked in Bank of America and Merrill Lynch, like, with the uber wealthy, like people that like own billion-dollar buildings in Manhattan, who thought like that was like the whole world thought those are the safest investments. Like if you own the GM building in Manhattan, that is like it's 100% occupied, right? It's like it is AAA in every which way. That those buildings are now like 80% of the tenants haven't paid. Like what was like, so who knows what happens with commercial real estate? Commercial real estate, if that cracks, like who knows what the ripple effects are, right? Like, but that's all I mean is that I'm not saying like the world's ending. I'm not saying that we're going to pull right out of it either. I'm just saying like, I don't think anyone has any real clue of what's going to happen. And my only hope, just to go political for 1 second, my only hope is that whoever wins in the election, they win by such a landslide that this doesn't become a new point of contention, because it just seems like our society has had so much contention recently, so much like hating of each other, so much of not seeing each other on like identifying with where the other person's coming from, that I don't know how much more our society as a whole can withstand that. And so like when I think about that, that seems very much in conflict with the idea that like society as a whole has been very reflective on what's most important to us. Because if we really were, I don't think it would be as antagonistic as it seems right now. But maybe I'm wrong.
No, it's a good point, and that's like I feel like we could speak probably for 2 hours just about that, like that topic, because it's I mean New York, San Francisco, these markets that are just like
decimated.
Nobody, like the thing is these things that there are certain people who see these things coming, but most people don't like. We don't, as human beings, we just don't like to think about bad things happening. We don't like to plan, like think about what's the worst thing that could happen. We don't like to talk and get data, and like this is because a lot of people who, before the subprime mortgage crisis, like there were guys that saw it coming. And like if you just went and spoke to mortgage brokers, you went and spoke to people at banks, you went and just, like in The Big Short, Steve Carell goes to Florida and they interview, people that own homes, and like it's, a stripper that now has 3 properties. And like, if you just talk to people, you'd be like, something really, really bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think there's people that said the same thing about what's happening now. I think there's stuff happening with like Robinhood. I posted the trading app where I think fractional ownership in stocks and all that's the gamification of investing. That's going to cause another bubble. That's going to be massive because all the stock run-ups are basically from momentum traders and FOMO and these young traders who don't know what they're doing, buying Tesla and Apple and just skyrocketing it, and that'll implode. It's a
You're still here. I hear you 100%.
Okay, so I think we're
at but we are at the time thing. So I do agree with Charlotte. Charlotte said I think the entrepreneurs will save the world. That's the only people that can save the world. It's not going to be politicians, that's for sure.
Yep.
It is the people that have succeeded most that hopefully make the biggest difference. So Max, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. And it's just cool that we were able to actually both get something done and talk at the same time. That's kind of cool. We didn't really fully cover like as much as I'd like to. Like this point of difference between the lifestyle entrepreneur and the growth entrepreneur. So maybe at some point we'll revisit that. It also gives me a chance to think a lot more about it, which I'm always enjoy doing. So that's cool. And where can for anyone who wants more to know more about you, where should they go? What is the name of your group that has the 30,000 marketers? And I'll do the same so that this way your audience will have it.
We both have outros. We're both shooting conclusions now for our separate shows.
No, it's not that. Just letting people know where they can find us.
I love it, man, and it's always a blast to chat. And inevitably, this usually happens. We have a topic and agenda for a call, and then we end up going on a 2-hour tangent, which is always. I think good stuff comes out of it. Hopefully, people are watching are like, they got some value out of it. I'd imagine they did because I do when I chat with you.
Ditto.
But yeah, so our Facebook group is marketing strategies for business leaders. If you search that, that's the name of the group. It's technically the handle is Unicorn IQ Hub, because back when our program info product called Unicorn IQ, we named it and you can't change the name. Right. So we're stuck with it. So that's our free group. And then if you go to unicorninnovations.com, that has all of our stuff about like our brands, our courses, our trainings. Then you can follow me on Facebook. Just search my name and yeah, I'm trying to put out more content. I went dark. I used to put out a lot more stuff, and then it's been so busy trying to continue to grow all the stuff we're doing that I put out less and less. Plus, having
you got a business,
business,
a house, and a child. Like, it's kind of a lot.
So
a lot of life. Yeah,
trying to navigate all that simultaneously. But yeah, man, glad to got the chat. And then if anyone has any questions for me, feel free to shoot me a message. Go to the group comment. Happy to help however I can. I know there was a few questions that came in that were about like acquisitions and e-com and stuff. So we didn't get to answer those, but I'm happy if you want to shoot me a message to do my best to answer all those questions.
Oh, that'd be awesome. And and for those that don't know me, my name's just Rich Schefren. The name of the company is Strategic Profits. The name of our group is Strategic Profits. And we aspire to have our group to be the size of Max's group. Right now we're at 3,500 or something like that. But we're growing, and there's lots of A-level, high-level marketers that are part of that group. And so we're intimate but active, and we all help each other. And I put a lot of my stuff in there that I charge for. So and it's free to join, as I'm sure yours is too, Max. So very cool. Any big plans for the rest of the week, or just moving into your house?
Continuing to build and try not to destroy things from frustrations of building stuff. So I built that fireplace thing over there yesterday. So making good progress on the building side. I got my 31st birthday on Thursday. So
that's right.
Trying to figure out what I want to do. It's a weird place that, you really can't go out and do anything. So we'll figure out something to do, something fun. Larissa she always makes my birthday a big thing with birthday week. And